7 brutal tests avoidants put you through before they fall in love. There's a unique kind of emotional warfare that happens when you fall for someone with an avoidant attachment style. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's subtle, but it cuts deep. It leaves you questioning your worth, your instincts, and sometimes even your sanity. Let's be honest. Falling for an avoidant feels like trying to hug a ghost. Just when you think you're getting close, they vanish. And yet you stay. You wait. Because you feel there's something real underneath all that armor, and you're not wrong. But before they let love in, avoidance often, consciously or unconsciously, put you through a series of brutal emotional tests. They want to see, are you safe? Can I trust you? Will you leave me if I let you see who I really am? And it's not fair, but understanding the tests can protect you. And more importantly, help you protect yourself. Here are 7 of those tests. If you recognize them, it's not your job to pass. It's your job to decide if this is a test you even want to take. When you're in a connection with someone who has an avoidant attachment style, one of the first things you'll notice is the emotional inconsistency. One day they're warm, affectionate, and fully engaged. You feel seen, valued, and even hopeful. The next day they're cold, distant, and emotionally unavailable, and you're left wondering what you did wrong. This roller coaster of affection and detachment isn't accidental. It's not just mood swings or a bad week. It's a pattern, and for many avoidants, it's a subconscious test to gauge how emotionally reactive you are and how much control they have over your emotional state. This kind of push-pull dynamic is confusing and emotionally draining, but it serves a psychological function for the avoidant partner. On a deeper level, they often fear emotional closeness because closeness feels threatening. It triggers a fear of being trapped, overwhelmed, or ultimately hurt. So when things start to feel too good, they pull away. That pulling away isn't just about their discomfort. It's also an unconscious question. Will you chase me? Will you panic? Will you prove that your emotions are completely dependent on my presence? When you experience this hot and cold behavior, it can feel like you're constantly trying to solve a puzzle with no answer. You replay conversations, analyze text messages, and ask yourself if you were too much, too emotional, too available. But the real issue isn't your behavior, it's their comfort with intimacy and consistency. What they're looking for, often without realizing it, is emotional safety. Ironically, their way of testing for safety is by being unsafe. They watch how you respond to withdrawal. Do you become anxious? Do you try harder? Do you reach out more when they give less? In their mind, if you become clingy or reactive, it validates their fear that closeness equals loss of control. Here's the hard parting: when someone is hot and cold and you're emotionally invested, it creates a chemical and emotional loop that's incredibly hard to break. Your brain starts to associate the high of connection with the low of withdrawal, creating an addictive cycle. The moments of warmth feel euphoric, but they're also fleet, so you chase them. This dynamic keeps you stuck in a state of emotional hunger, always reaching for something that's never fully offered. The truth is, the inconsistency isn't just painful, it's designed to test your emotional boundaries. Will you tolerate emotional chaos just to keep someone close? Will you ignore your needs and shrink your voice just to keep the peace? Or will you stay grounded, centered, and self-respecting even when someone you care about is pulling away? That's what this test is really about. Avoidants are not trying to be cruel, but they are often stuck in their own loop of fear and avoidance. Your job isn't to pass the test by being endlessly patient or emotionally bulletproof. Your job is to notice the pattern, see it clearly, and decide if your peace is worth sacrificing for someone who can't meet you consistently. When someone with an avoidant attachment style tells you they're too busy for a relationship or not in the right place for something serious, it can feel honest, even mature, and sometimes it is. But in many cases, this statement becomes a tool, consciously or not, to maintain emotional distance while still enjoying the benefits of your attention, care, and emotional investment. It creates a dynamic where you're encouraged to stay connected, keep giving, and show up consistently, all while they maintain an escape hatch. This "I'm not ready" narrative is one of the most confusing and manipulative emotional tests an avoidant can use. It sets up a scenario where the terms are vague and the expectations are one-sided. You may hear them say they're not ready for a relationship, but they still text you daily, flirt, want to spend time with you, and open up emotionally. It feels like a relationship in every way, except in name. And because the connection feels real and meaningful, you convince yourself that if you just stay patient, eventually they'll change their mind. You start overgiving, more understanding, more emotional labor, more time, hoping that consistency will melt their fear of commitment. But what's really being tested here is how willing are to exist in emotional limbo. The avoidant person is watching how far you'll stretch yourself for something uncertain. Will you keep investing in someone who clearly said they can't or won't fully show up for you? Will you try to prove you're worth it by being the most low-maintenance, undemanding partner possible? This test isn't about their readiness. It's about whether your need for clarity and commitment will override your attraction to them. They want closeness without obligation, connection without vulnerability, and reassurance without reciprocation. What's dangerous about this setup is that it often tricks you into self-abandonment. You begin to override your own needs, your desire for commitment, or your right to emotional security. Because you're afraid of losing the connection, you rationalize their behavior by blaming timing, past trauma, or external stress. You start to believe that if you're just a little more patient or understanding, they'll eventually be ready. But this readiness is often a moving target. If someone is repeatedly telling you they're not ready, but still pulling you close, they're managing your expectations without ever fully letting you go. This dynamic feeds the avoidant's need for control. They get intimacy on their terms without having to face the discomfort that comes with true emotional availability. And if you begin to ask for more clarity or commitment, they can fall back on the original statement, "I told you I wasn't ready." It protects them from accountability while keeping you emotionally tethered. Understanding this pattern is crucial. You can't build a real, mutual relationship with someone who only wants to meet halfway. It's not your job to wait until it's ready for love if they're not actively working toward emotional growth. Being too busy for a relationship shouldn't mean they're not too busy to benefit from yours. One of the most emotion destabilizing experiences in a connection with an avoidant partner is the disappearing act. They go silent. Not just for a few hours, but sometimes for days or even weeks. One moment you're talking regularly, sharing moments, maybe even feeling a growing bond. Then suddenly, there's nothing. No texts, no calls, no explanation. And just when you're starting to wonder if it's over, they reappear as if nothing happened. No apology, no acknowledgement, just a casual message like, "Hey, how's your week been?" It's maddening. But more than that, it's a test. The disappearing act is a subtle but powerful way avoidants test your emotional boundaries. They are often deeply afraid of being engulfed, of being too dependent on someone else, or of being seen too clearly. When they begin to feel emotionally exposed, their instinct is to retreat, to disconnect in order to regain a sense of control. But make no mistake, how you respond to their silence becomes information to them. They're watching to see what you'll do with the space they've created. Will you chase them? Will you double text? Will you confront them? Or will you pretend it didn't happen just to keep the peace? This test often puts you in a position where you feel like you're walking on emotional eggshells. You don't want to seem needy, but the silence hurts. You start questioning yourself. Did I say something wrong? Did I come on too strong? And instead of holding the other person accountable for disappearing, you take the blame. That's what makes this tactic so quietly damaging. It shifts the emotional burden entirely onto you. The avoidant partner avoids confrontation or vulnerability by going silent, and you're left to deal with the emotional confusion alone. If you accept the disappearing act without addressing it, you're unintentionally communicating that your need for consistency is negotiable. You're signaling that you'll tolerate emotional absence without boundaries or consequences. Over time, this creates a dynamic where the avoidant person feels even more empowered to come and go as they please. And each time they do, your sense of emotional security in the connection erodes a little more. But silence isn't neutral. In healthy relationships, communication doesn't just disappear. When someone values your emotional well-being, they don't leave you guessing. They don't disappear when they're overwhelmed. They communicate their need for space in a way that respects you. Avoidants who use silence as a defense mechanism are often doing so because they never learned how to manage intimacy without fear. But just because that fear is real doesn't mean you have to accommodate it at the cost of your own peace. The real test here isn't whether you'll chase after them. It's whether you'll uphold your own emotional boundaries. Will you normalize the disappearing act just to stay close to someone emotionally unavailable? Or will you respect your own need for consistency, communication, and emotional safety, even if it means letting go of someone who can't give it to you? One of the most confusing dynamics with an avoidant partner is what happens after moments of closeness or emotional vulnerability. You have a deep conversation, you feel connected, maybe even hopeful. They open up to you, or you share something personal and it seems like a turning point. But then, almost without warning, they pull back. They become distant, less responsive, or emotionally cold. You're left wondering, what just happened? You replay everything in your head, trying to figure out what you said or did wrong. But the truth is that you didn't do anything wrong. You just got too close, and that triggered something in them. Avoidant individuals are often uncomfortable with intimacy, even though they crave it deep down. They want to be loved, seen and understood like anyone else, but when they actually start to feel those things, it creates internal panic. That closeness threatens their carefully constructed emotional walls. Vulnerability feels unsafe because it brings the risk of rejection, of dependence, of being known too well. So, the moment intimacy becomes real, their instinct is to push away, either through emotional shutdown, creating conflict, or becoming suddenly too busy or overwhelmed. It's not about you, it's about their fear of what emotional closeness demands. This pattern becomes a test of how you manage your own vulnerability in response to theirs. When they pull back after connection, they're watching what you do next. Do you start apologizing for opening up? Do you downplay your own feelings to make them comfortable? Do you chase after them, trying to re-establish the intimacy that was just lost? Or do you stay steady, centered in your own emotional truth, without over-functioning to fix the sudden disconnection? The key here is recognizing that emotional intimacy shouldn't feel like walking into a trap. When someone makes you feel safe one moment and punished the next, it conditions you to be afraid of being real. You start censoring yourself, keeping your emotions in check, offering only the parts of yourself that feel safe for them to receive. But that's not connection, that's self-abandonment. And while it might temporarily ease the avoidance discomfort, it chips away at your confidence and emotional freedom. What the avoidant is testing, intentionally or not, is whether you can remain emotionally available without pressuring them for more than they can give, and whether you'll tolerate inconsistency in exchange for brief moments of closeness. They want to know if you can be safe for them, meaning you don't demand too much, and you don't get reactive, you don't reflect their fear of intimacy back at them. But in the process, they're also asking you to compromise your own needs. That's the hidden danger. True vulnerability is mutual. It's not about one person opening up while the other retreats. When emotional connection consistently leads to withdrawal, you're being shown a relationship that isn't yet equipped for healthy intimacy. And while it's tempting to stick around and prove your patience, this isn't about you not. What's really being tested is whether you'll abandon your emotional needs for the illusion of love. And jealousy is a powerful emotion, and avoidant individuals sometimes use it, often subconsciously, as a tool to test your emotional stability and self-worth. You might notice them bringing up an ex in casual conversation, mentioning someone they've been talking to, or even flirting in front of you in a subtle but undeniable way. At first, you might think you're imagining things or being overly sensitive, but it becomes a pattern. These moments seem designed to provoke a reaction, and that's exactly the point. They want to see how you'll respond when your sense of security is shaken. This behavior isn't always malicious. In fact, for many avoidants, it's a form of emotional defense. Deep down, they fear vulnerability and intimacy, and one way they cope is by keeping control of the emotional dynamic. Triggering jealousy allows them to observe how much power they hold. If they can make you feel insecure, jealous, or even competitive, it reinforces their internal belief that closeness leads to volatility and emotional dependence. It also gives them a buffer. If you're emotionally off balance, they don't have to deal with their own vulnerability because your focus is now on winning them back or proving your worth. For you not, though the effect can be devastating. Being on the receiving end of jealousy games can leave you questioning your value. You might start comparing yourself to others and about you not, analyzing everything they say or do, trying to interpret what's real and what's meant to provoke you. Your focus shifts away from genuine connection and towards self-doubt and emotional vigilance. You begin walking a tightrope, trying not to show too much jealousy, yet feeling increasingly unsettled inside. In this test, what's really being measured is your sense of self. An avoidant partner may be testing to see if you can stay grounded in your self-worth when they subtly introduce competition or ambiguity. They want to know if your emotional regulation depends entirely on their validation. If you react strongly, showing jealousy, insecurity, or needness, it reinforces their fear that emotional closeness leads to drama. If you don't react at all, they might see you as detached, which also threatens their sense of importance. It's a no-win situation unless you're aware of the game and choose to step out of it entirely. What's most important to understand is that real connection doesn't need to rely on triggering jealousy or uncertainty to feel alive. Relationships built on emotional manipulation or insecurity might feel intense, but that intensity is often mistaken for passion. True emotional safety doesn't make you feel like you're in competition with someone from their past or someone they just met. It makes you feel chosen, not tested. When someone tries to provoke jealousy in you, they are not building a foundation of trust. They are testing the limits of your emotional boundaries. The question is, will you play along, seeking reassurance, or will you call out the pattern and stand firm in your self-worth? Because how to respond isn't just about keeping the connection. It's about keeping your power. Thank you for listening and trusting me to share this with you today. I hope this gives you clarity, courage, and the strength to choose yourself first. Your emotional well-being is the foundation for any healthy relationship, and honoring that is the bravest thing you can do. Take care of yourself, stand tall, and never settle for less than the love you deserve. Thank you.